The phone buzzed against my mahogany desk as I reviewed quarterly reports for my tech company. 15 years of building this empire and I'd learned to ignore most interruptions. But when I saw Mom on the caller ID, my stomach twisted with that familiar knot of dread and anger. If this story touches you, support us by subscribing and letting us know your location in the comments. Now let's continue this story together. "My love," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness I remembered too well. "Your daddy and I are having some financial troubles and we know you're doing real good for yourself now." "Stop right there." I cut her off, my hand gripping the phone so tight my knuckles went white. "You mean the same daddy who handed me over to Gary Lawson when I was 12? The same mama who counted dirty money while I screamed for help?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside my corner office windows, the city sprawled below, a testament to everything I'd built from nothing. But in that moment I was 12 again, standing in our cramped living room while my parents negotiated my fate like I was livestock. "That was different, Carol. We were desperate and Gary promised he'd take care of you." "Take care of me?" My voice rose despite years of therapy teaching me control. "He trafficked me for 3 years. 3 years of hell that you sold me into for $5,000. We thought you were just going to work in his restaurant," she whispered, but even she didn't believe that lie anymore. "No, you didn't. You knew exactly what you were doing. And now you want my money." The audacity was breathtaking but somehow not surprising. That call triggered the flashback that always came, my 12th birthday, the day everything changed. I was excited because Mama had promised we'd go to Chuck E. Cheese, something we never could afford. Instead, Gary Lawson showed up at our door. He was tall, well-dressed, with gold teeth that glinted when he smiled. Everything about him screamed danger, but my parents welcomed him like family. I remember hiding behind Mama's legs, something deep in my gut screaming, "Run." "This her?" Gary asked, looking me up and down like he was inspecting merchandise. His eyes lingered in ways that made my skin crawl. "She's perfect. Young, pretty, trainable." "Carol's a good girl," Daddy said, his voice shaking slightly. "Real obedient, won't cause no trouble." I didn't understand the adult conversation happening over my head, but I felt the shift in energy. Mama's hands on my shoulders weren't protective anymore. They were restraining. $5,000 now, $5,000 when I pick her up next week," Gary said, pulling out a thick roll of bills. "Give me time to get everything ready for her." I watched my parents' eyes light up at the sight of more money than we'd ever had. Mama was already mentally spending it. I could see her calculating rent, groceries, her cigarettes. Neither of them looked at me. "What about school?" I asked, my voice small and scared. Gary laughed, a sound that would haunt my nightmares for years. "Don't worry, baby girl. I'm gonna teach you everything you need to know." The way he said it made my blood turn to ice. A week later, Gary returned with a black SUV and 2 other men I'd never seen. My parents had my small suitcase ready, everything I owned in one beat-up bag. "Where are we going?" I asked, clinging to Mama's arm. For all their faults, they were all I knew. Some instinct told me once I left with these men, nothing would ever be the same. "Gary is gonna take real good care of you," Mama said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. "You gonna live in a big house, eat good food every day. Better than we can give you here." "I don't want to go," I whispered, tears starting to fall. "Please, Mama, don't make me go." But Gary was already taking my arm, his grip firm and painful. "Come on now, Carol. Your parents need you to be a big girl. They're gonna use this money to get back on their feet, maybe have another baby. You want to help your family, don't you?" The manipulation was masterful, even to my 12-year-old mind. He was making me complicit in my own destruction, making me feel guilty for not wanting to go. "Be good, baby," Daddy called as Gary loaded me into the SUV. "Make us proud." Those were the last words my father ever said to me. As we drove away, I pressed my face to the tinted window, watching my parents count their blood money on the front porch. They looked relieved, like a burden had been lifted from their shoulders. I was the burden they'd been waiting to get rid of. The realization hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath and breaking something fundamental inside my chest. Gary's big house was a nightmare wrapped in suburban normalcy. From the outside, it looked like any other family home. Inside, it was a carefully orchestrated hell designed to break spirits and manufacture compliance. "Welcome to your new life," Gary said, leading me through rooms filled with other girls. Some were my age, others looked even younger. All had the same hollow, frightened look in their eyes, the look of prey that knows it's trapped. A woman named Carmen ran the day-to-day operations. She was beautiful in a hard way, with scars hidden under makeup and a voice like broken glass. Rule number 1, she told me that first day: your old life is dead. Your parents sold you to us, which means they never loved you anyway. We're your family now. The psychological warfare was immediate and brutal. Every day they reinforced that I was worthless, that my parents had thrown me away like garbage, that this was all I deserved. They showed us newspaper clippings about missing children whose families were desperately searching for them. See, Carmen would say, pointing to the tearful families. These children were loved. Their families want them back. Where are your parents, Carol? Have they called? Have they tried to find you? The silence was my answer, and it cut deeper than any physical wound. They fed us just enough to keep us functional, but not enough to give us strength. They gave us drugs to keep us compliant, but not enough to kill us. Everything was calculated to maintain maximum control with minimum loss of inventory. But I wasn't broken yet. Deep inside, a small flame of anger burned bright. I held onto it like a lifeline, nurturing it with every indignity, every violation, every reminder that I was worth more than this. After 6 months, I'd learned the brutal economics of our situation. We were products, nothing more. The younger you were, the higher your value. The more you fought, the worse your treatment became. But compliance meant survival, and survival meant opportunity. I watched everything, learned everyone's patterns. Gary had a rotation of men who came through. Some regulars, some one-time clients. He kept meticulous records in a locked filing cabinet in his office. Money flowed through the house like water, but most of us never saw a penny. Carmen took a special interest in training me. She'd been trafficked herself as a child, she told me one night when she was drunk and feeling sentimental. I survived by being smart, she whispered. You got that same look in your eyes, like you're planning something. Be careful, girl. Hope is dangerous in a place like this. But hope was all I had left. I started small, memorizing license plates, noting which men seemed nervous or guilty, learning which girls had been there longest and how they'd adapted. Information was the only currency I had access to, so I began collecting it obsessively. One night, I overheard Gary on the phone with someone he called the boss. Apparently, he wasn't even the top of this food chain. There were other houses, other girls, a whole network I was just a small part of. The scope of it was overwhelming, but it also meant there were more people involved, more chances for someone to make a mistake. We need to move some of the older ones out soon, Gary was saying. They're getting too expensive to maintain, and the clients want fresh faces. I was 13 now, practically ancient by their twisted standards. My window of opportunity was closing fast. By year 2, I'd identified my best chance of escape. A client named David Howard. Unlike the others, he actually looked ashamed when he left. He was young, maybe mid-20s, and drove a beat-up Honda that suggested he wasn't wealthy like most of Gary's clientele. During one of our encounters, I took a desperate gamble. You don't want to be here, I said quietly. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Don't talk. You're not supposed to talk. I'm 14, I continued, ignoring his panic. I have a little sister somewhere who's probably 8 now. If someone was hurting her like this, would you want someone to help? His face went white. Stop. Just stop talking. But I could see the crack in his armor. My name is Carol. I've been here 2 years. If you don't help me, I'm going to die in this house, and you're going to be part of the reason why. He left without another word, but something had shifted. 3 weeks later, he was back, looking sick with guilt and fear. If I help you, he whispered while the cameras were supposedly offline for maintenance, they'll kill both of us. If you don't help me, you'll kill yourself eventually, I replied. I can see it eating you alive. How many other girls are you going to let them destroy before you decide you've had enough? It was harsh, but I was long past caring about his feelings. This was survival, pure and simple. What do you need? He asked finally. A phone. One call. That's all I'm asking. He looked terrified, but he nodded. David smuggled me a disposable cell phone 3 days later. I had one chance, one number I'd memorized from watching enough crime shows to know who to call. The National Human Trafficking Hotline. My name is Carol Lawson, and I'm being held at 247 Oak Street. I whispered into the phone from the bathroom at 3 a.m. There are 12 other girls here, ages 10 to 16. The man who runs it is Gary Lawson, and there are at least 3 other houses in the network. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. Can you stay on the line? We're tracing this location now. No, I have to go. They check on us every hour. But I heard Gary talking about moving some of us next week. Please hurry. I hung up and flushed the phone down the toilet, then crawled back into bed with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake the other girls. For 3 days nothing happened. I began to think the call had been ignored, that we were too insignificant for anyone to care about. Then on a Tuesday morning while Gary was out picking up new inventory, the front door exploded inward. Federal agents. Get on the ground. The next few hours were chaos. Carmen tried to run but was tackled in the backyard. The other guards were arrested. We girls were wrapped in blankets and loaded into vans, not as criminals but as victims. The first time in years anyone had treated us as people worthy of protection. Agent Sarah Martinez rode with me to the hospital. You made that call, didn't you? She asked quietly. I nodded, too exhausted and overwhelmed to lie. You saved 13 lives that night, including your own. But the war was far from over. It was just beginning. The rescue was just the start of a longer nightmare. Foster care was supposed to be safe, but after years of trauma, I trusted no one. I ran away 4 times in the first month, always expecting to be dragged back to Gary or someone like him. My caseworker, Mrs. Rodriguez, was patient but firm. Carol, your parents have been contacted. They know you've been found. What did they say? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. They said they thought you were dead. They claimed they had no idea Gary was trafficking children. That's a lie. The words came out flat and cold. They knew exactly what they were doing. They sold me. I believe you, Mrs. Rodriguez said gently. But proving it legally is complicated. They're claiming to be victims too, saying Gary deceived them about his intentions. The rage that consumed me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever felt. My parents were going to walk away free while I lived with the consequences of their betrayal forever. The injustice of it was breathtaking. What about Gary? He's been sentenced to life without parole. The other houses were raided, dozens more girls rescued. Your phone call brought down an entire trafficking network. It should have felt like victory, but it felt empty. Gary was behind bars, but the people who'd made it possible for him to destroy me were free, probably spending whatever money they had left from selling their daughter. That night I made a promise to myself. I would never be powerless again. I would build something so big, so successful, that no one could ever hurt me or anyone I cared about. And someday when I was strong enough, I would make sure my parents understood exactly what they'd cost me. The game had changed and I intended to win. At 17, I aged out of foster care with nothing but a high school diploma and burning ambition. While other kids my age worried about prom and college applications, I was working 3 jobs and teaching myself computer programming at the public library. The tech boom was just beginning and I could see opportunities everywhere. I started small, fixing computers for cash, building basic websites for local businesses. Every dollar went toward my goal: financial independence so complete that no one could ever control me again. You're obsessed, said my roommate Jenny, another foster kid who'd become my closest friend. You work 18 hours a day. When do you actually live your life? This is my life, I replied, not looking up from my laptop. I'm not building a business, Jenny. I'm building armor. My first real breakthrough came when I developed a security software that helped businesses protect against data breaches. Having lived through the worst kind of violation, I understood the value of protection in ways my competitors couldn't match. By 22, my company had 50 employees. By 25, we'd gone public. The girl who'd once been bought and sold for $5,000 was worth $50 million. But success brought unexpected challenges. The tech world was overwhelmingly male, and many investors couldn't see past my age, my background, or my refusal to play their games. I learned to use their underestimation as a weapon, striking deals while they were still trying to figure out how a young black woman had outsmarted them. You're ruthless, one competitor told me after I'd bought his company for half what he thought it was worth. Where did you learn to be so cutthroat? Prison, I replied simply, watching his face go white with confusion and fear. The reputation served me well. In boardrooms, I was known as someone who never backed down, never showed weakness, and always came prepared for war. Success brought media attention I'd never wanted. Forbes put me on their cover as the youngest self-made tech billionaire. The story was sanitized, focusing on my humble beginnings and entrepreneurial spirit without mentioning the darker truths. But someone from my past was watching. A message appeared in my company email from an address I didn't recognize. Is this really Carol? It's David. We need to talk. David Howard, the client who'd helped me escape. I'd wondered what happened to him over the years, whether guilt had consumed him or if he'd managed to move on. We met at a coffee shop downtown. He looked older, worn down by whatever guilt he'd carried for over a decade. I've followed your success, he said quietly. I kept thinking I should reach out, but what do you say to someone whose life you helped save? Congratulations seemed inadequate. Thank you would be a start, I replied. You took a huge risk to help me. Why? My little sister was abducted when she was 12. We never found her. His voice broke slightly. When you said you had a sister, I couldn't let another family go through what mine did. I couldn't be part of destroying someone else's child. What happened to your sister? We don't know. She just disappeared one day walking home from school. That was 15 years ago. An idea began forming in my mind. What if I told you I could help you find her? What if I told you I've been building something that could help find all of them? His eyes widened. What are you talking about? I've been funding a private organization that tracks down trafficking networks and missing children. We use my technology, my resources, my connections. It's completely off the books, completely unofficial. That's incredible. How many have you found? 47 so far. 23 alive, 24. I couldn't finish that sentence. But we're getting better at it. What's your sister's name? Lisa Howard. She'd be 27 now. I made a note in my phone. I'll have my team start looking immediately. 3 months later, my parents called. Not the usual guilt trip or money grab. This was different. Fear crackled through the phone line like electricity. Carol, baby, we need your help, Mama said, her voice shaking. These people came by the house asking questions about you, about Gary, about what happened. They know things, baby. They know everything. What kind of people? I asked, though I had my suspicions. FBI or something. They had badges. They said they're reopening the case, looking at everyone who was connected to Gary. They said we could be charged as accomplices if we don't cooperate. The irony was delicious. After 15 years, the law was finally catching up to them. My private investigations had uncovered evidence that could tie dozens of people to Gary's network, including parents who'd sold their children. What do you want from me? I asked. You got lawyers, right? Good ones. Maybe you could put in a word, tell them we didn't know what Gary was really doing. But you did know, I said calmly. You knew exactly what you were selling me into. The question is whether I'm going to help you lie about it or finally tell the truth. Silence stretched between us. I could hear Daddy breathing hard in the background, probably having another one of his anxiety attacks. Carol, please, Mama whispered. We're your parents. We made mistakes, but we're still family. No, I said firmly. Family doesn't sell their children. Family protects each other. You taught me the difference between those two things the day you handed me over to Gary. If you don't help us, we could go to prison. Good, I replied. Maybe you'll finally understand what it feels like to be trapped somewhere you don't want to be. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. It was time for the truth to come out, all of it. The FBI contacted me 2 weeks later. Agent Martinez, the same woman who'd rescued me 15 years ago, was now leading a task force dedicated to prosecuting everyone connected to trafficking networks. We have evidence that your parents accepted payment in exchange for turning you over to Gary Lawson, she told me during our meeting. But we need your testimony to make the charges stick. What are we talking about exactly? Conspiracy to commit human trafficking, child endangerment, potentially more depending on what they knew about Gary's operation. Your parents are claiming ignorance, saying they thought they were sending you to work in a legitimate business. They're lying. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared. I've been investigating this for years. Gary didn't just randomly target our family. There were other children from our neighborhood, all from families in financial distress. He had a system, a recruitment strategy. My parents weren't victims. They were participants. Agent Martinez reviewed my evidence with growing amazement. This is incredible work. You've connected cases we didn't even know were related. I want to testify, I said firmly. Not just about my own case, but about all of it. Every child I've helped find, every trafficking ring we've uncovered, every parent who sold their kid for quick cash. I want them all to face consequences. Are you sure? This will be public, highly publicized. Your private life will be torn apart in court. I've been silent for 15 years while predators and their enablers walked free. I'm done being silent. 2 months later, I sat in federal court across from my parents for the first time since I was 12 years old. They looked smaller than I remembered, aged by years of guilt and poverty. But when they looked at me, I didn't see remorse. I saw resentment. They resented my success. They resented that I'd survived. They resented that I was finally holding them accountable for what they'd done. It was time to remind them exactly who they were dealing with. State your name for the record, the prosecutor said. Carol Lawson, CEO and founder of SecureNet Technologies. My testimony lasted 3 days. I told them everything. The day my parents sold me, the 3 years of hell that followed, and the 15 years I'd spent hunting down others like Gary to make sure no other child suffered what I had. The defense tried to paint me as vindictive, claiming I was lying to get revenge on my parents. But the evidence was overwhelming. Phone records, financial transactions, testimony from other victims. It all painted a clear picture of a conspiracy to traffic children. When my mother finally took the stand, she broke down completely. We were desperate, she sobbed. We thought he would give her a better life. We thought she'd be safer with him than with us. Did you ask what kind of work a 12-year-old would be doing for $5,000? The prosecutor pressed. We didn't want to know, she admitted. That was the moment that broke the case wide open. Not wanting to know was complicity. Willful ignorance in the face of obvious red flags made them accessories to my trafficking. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. As they led my parents away in handcuffs, my mother turned to me one last time. We're still your parents, she called out. This money you made, this success, we're the reason you're so strong. This is our investment paying off. Even then, even facing prison, she couldn't accept responsibility for what she'd done. She was trying to take credit for my success, claiming my trauma was somehow their gift to me. But I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt free. Outside the courthouse, Agent Martinez found me. We've got 23 more cases ready to go to trial based on your investigation. You've started something bigger than you know. Good, I replied, watching my parents' transport van disappear down the street. Every child deserves someone who will fight for them. If their own parents won't do it, then strangers like us will have to step up. I walked back to my car where David was waiting with news about his sister. We'd found her, alive, recovered, getting the help she needed to rebuild her life. The little girl who'd been sold for $5,000 was now worth over $1 billion. But more importantly, I'd learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the lives you save, the justice you create, and the strength you find to keep fighting even when everyone else has given up on you. My parents had tried to sell me. Instead, they'd forged me into someone who could buy and sell them 1,000 times over. The investment had paid off all right, just not the way they'd planned. I've been losing sleep over whether I did the right thing. Some days I feel completely justified. Other days I wonder if I'm the villain in this story. Help me out here.